How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Coffee with Ryan on a Wednesday morning. That was really fun. How's it going, everyone? So, I just got a notification from Google Hangouts, and it says Hangouts on Air is going away later this year. For quick streaming, try youtube.com/webcam. Really? They're going to take Hangouts on Air away? You do realize that Hangouts on Air is what allows us to go live with more than one person from more than one location. So when Mercury and I go live together, it's on Hangouts on Air. You can't just do that from youtube.com/webcam. So I guess Google is going to completely take away Hangouts on Air, which is absolute garbage. But you know what? They might have their reasons. And who am I to be entitled to Hangouts on Air? Because I'm such a gracious YouTube host, I've decided to put up a towel with a lobster on it to make my background more substantial, to stick with the Jordan Peterson theme. Where did I find this towel? I found this towel amongst a pile of many towels, in which when I saw the lobster, I immediately thought to myself, I got to hang that towel up behind me. It's going to look really good. Look at that. Doesn't that look nice? It looks beautiful. I should probably check the chat, see who's here. Hold on. I'll be there in a second. Say hi to everyone. Boom, boom, boom. Let's see. Here we are. Okay, welcome everyone. We've got Credenzio Studios says, use OBS. I'll show you how to use it. That would be fantastic. Thank you so much for offering. That's a crab. Yeah, it's a crab. You're right. It's not a lobster. But it looks close enough to a lobster to call it a lobster, I hope. But you're right. It's not a lobster. It's wide like a crab. But we got to can we at least say it's in the, what is it? The crustacean family or something. So we'll count it. Can we count it? Good morning, Shane. Potato. I am going to moderate you today because you were kind of a dick to Mercury yesterday. So sorry, man. You kind of crossed the line. So I'm going to block you. But maybe I'll unblock you in a week or two. Okay. Predenzio says, I'm not. CGH Longstone first says, OBS Studio. Perfect. Thank you. I will do that. Shane says, good morning. Good morning, Shane. I'm not a Credenzio Studio says, I'm not a marine biologist. I just know that isn't a lobster. Yeah, you got me. I got carried away with excitement calling it a lobster. It's not a lobster. But now that I've sufficiently embarrassed myself, it's a great time to get started on the stream. Yeah, but I am fairly disappointed that they're taking away Google Hangouts. That was a pretty cool function that we had access to. But I have an exciting read for you. This is the Red Book by Carl Jung. And it's a fantastic... I'm getting some weird feedback on my headphones. Hold on a second. Do I sound okay? I'm going to take these out because I'm getting some strange feedback. This is a fantastic read. And I'd like to read something to you. Daniel King says, the crabs are our crustacean cousin. I love how you said our. Yes, the crab is the cousin of the lobster, so we embrace our cousins. Cousins are still family. Crabs have hierarchies too. It's close enough. I wonder what's older, a crab or a lobster? That's probably the first evolutionary question I'd be asking Dr. Peterson. I'd be like, Doc, so whose hierarchies are older, crabs or lobsters? I bet it's lobsters. Otherwise, he would have used crabs as an example. Okay, Red Book. Good passage in here. It's about looking within and the importance of looking inward for answers rather than externally. And I'd like to read it to you. I'm going to pull the mic up here. The Red Book, I think it was published in 2010. A bunch of Jung's more mystical work, or you could call it spiritual exploration, 2009. And he didn't want it published during his life partly because of fear that it would discredit him as a scientist, because it was so exploratory and unscientific the way that he went about writing these passages and exploring his own consciousness and psyche. So let us read a beautiful passage here. Believe me, it is no teaching and no instruction that I give you. On what basis should I presume to teach you? I give you news of the way of this man, but not of your own way. My path is not your path. Therefore, I cannot teach you. The way is within us, but not in gods, nor in teachings, nor in laws. Within us is the way, the truth, and the life. Woe betide those who live by way of examples. Life is not with them. If you live according to an example, you thus live the life of that example. But who should live your own life, if not yourself? So live yourselves. The signposts have fallen. Unblazed trails lie before us. Do not be greedy to gobble up the fruits of foreign fields. Do you not know that you yourselves are the fertile acre which bears everything that avails you? Yet who today knows this? Who knows the way to the eternally fruitful climes of the soul? You seek the way through mere appearances. You study books and give ear to all kinds of opinion. What good is all that? There is only one way, and it is your way. You seek the path. I warn you away from my own. It can also be the wrong way for you. May each go his own way. I will be no savior, no lawgiver, no master, teacher unto you. You are no longer little children. Giving laws, bettering, making things easier has all become wrong and evil. May each seek out his own way. The way leads to mutual love and community. Men will come to see and feel the similarity and commonality of their ways. Laws and teachings held in common compel people to solitude, so they may escape the pressure of undesirable contact. But solitude makes people hostile and venomous. Therefore, give people dignity and let each of them stand apart, so that each may find his own fellowship and love it. Power stands against power, contempt against contempt, love against love. Give humanity dignity and trust that life will find the better way. The one eye of the Godhead is blind. The one ear of the Godhead is deaf. The order of its being is crossed by chaos. So be patient with the crippledness of the world and do not overvalue its consummate beauty. When I read that this morning, I realized it's so easy to get caught up in the external world, to look at how other people feel life should be lived, to make sure that I'm gathering enough information and constantly seeking answers out there, trusting myself less and less as I continue to search the world for meaning that I could find within myself. And don't get me wrong, I don't think what Jung is saying is that we shouldn't seek or read or communicate with great teachers, mentors, professors, and places that we can learn life lessons. In fact, he spent his whole life doing that. After all, he came up under the tutelage of Sigmund Freud and developed many of his skills under his mentorship. But that's not the point. The point isn't that we don't do things, that we don't go outside. The point is that we don't expect it to generate our own livelihood, that we have the ability to become a revelation unto ourselves, to be connected enough to whatever it is, what Jung was calling in this book, the spirit of the depths, connected to that deeper spirit of the depths so that we don't have to over rely on external validation to thrive as a human soul. CGH, welcome, brother. I'm glad you're here. Says, examples are design patterns. Copying is simple repetition. Architecture is synthesis. Beautiful. I love that statement. And what we can learn from others, we have to make it our own. Just like you can repeat and regurgitate everything that Peterson says or everything that one of your favorite teachers says. But unless you have your own spin on it, your own special something that makes it your experience, then it's just kind of dead. So let's see here. We've got any other comments coming in? Well, I missed Gloff's comment. He says, in like a, sorry, I missed your comment, Gloff. I didn't see it up top. In like a burglar, wouldn't mind having you on Gloff Sorts at some point, man. Yeah, absolutely, Gloff. I saw that you have a new channel called Gloff Sorts, and I was excited for you, and I would love to speak with you on it anytime. We just have to schedule it. Kirk B says, building your own house from what you take in. Yes, absolutely. And building it in your own way, adding your own creativity, adding your own personal touch to it so that it truly is something unique to you. Now, this whole path of looking within, I don't know if it's for everyone. In fact, I suspect most of the population isn't. Oh, hello. Welcome. My brother is here. That's a crab.
You know that's
I got roasted.
That's a crab, right?
I already got roasted for that.
Really? Who did that?
Well, they weren't too mean about it. They just said, I'm not a marine biologist, but I know that isn't a lobster.
Who is that?
Credenzio.
Credenzio Studios. Sounds like a schmuck.
No, he's not a schmuck.
No, I think
or they're not. I don't know.
I think that person's definitely a schmuck.
No, I don't insult my listeners, Colton. You're gonna get moderated if you do that.
What if it was me?
And that's different. You're my brother.
But so if I was Credenzio Studios, it'd be okay.
No, Colton, it's a fucking crab. I deserve to get a little grief for calling it a lobster.
I am Credenzio Studios.
You are? That's your.
Yeah.
I just defended you to yourself. No, that's your. You have another YouTube account?
I just changed the name. We did
I was wondering who made. What's up, Shane? I see you. I'll read you in a second. I'm a Cancer Gemini. I think I'm more Cancer than Gemini, so the crab works for me too. That's hilarious. I didn't know you changed your YouTube username.
Just one of them.
So what we're talking about is the power of looking from within rather than externally for answers. And I read this passage from the Red Book, which talks about the true path to take is the path of looking from within, looking within for answers rather than externally for how to live your life. So,
yeah.
What do you think about that?
I agree.
You agree? Thank you for that insight.
You're welcome.
Beautiful. You heading out?
Yeah, I got to work. I just want to stop in and tell you about your crab.
Thank you for coming on in. And I guess you have the moderator wrench, so that's good. Oh, fantastic. Well, I'll be done in a little bit. I should probably close the garage door so I don't get distracted by kids running around. But the chapter of the Red Book, I've got the reader's edition here. I've got the big one at home. It's the one after The Way of What Is to Come. Let me pull it up. Refinding the Soul, it's called. So it's within the very beginning. So the first few pages is The Way of What Is to Come, and then it gets into Refinding the Soul. On page 127 of the, well, actually, no, it's actually not. It's the last 2 pages of The Way of What Is to Come. Refinding the Soul is next. So there you go. I would highly recommend picking up the reader's edition of the Red Book. The art edition that has all the text and art in it is pretty expensive. It's worth it if you're into collecting and stuff like that. And the pictures are obviously beautiful, the paintings, but the reader's edition is where it's at as far as just getting into the actual content, because that book's so big, it's like you're not going to carry that around. Shane says, I'm a Cancer, so it works all right. I think I already read that. The crab, that is. Daniel says, haha, I'm sure he was laughing at Colton and I's interaction. God, he really got me there. He really roasted me. But it's all good. We've got the archetypal Cain and Abel competition going for us. Although we've kind of squashed all our beef, and now we're just moving into supporting each other, which has been fantastic. But you can't override the biology of competitive brotherhood. That's just, that's just what it is. Shane says, I'm a Cancer Leo on the cusp. Yeah, so we're both on the cusp, which is really interesting. So you're on you're on the cusp before me, and I'm on the next cusp on the summer solstice. That's fascinating. Devastator 252101 says, archetypal noobs. I'm an archetypal noob. That is one I have not yet come across, an archetypal noob. It's a very interesting insult. But I'll take it. I mean, I kind of am an archetypal noob. So maybe it's not an insult. I mean, I've only been studying Jung for a few years, studying it seriously for less than a year, and studying Peterson for a few years. So yeah, you got to be a fool to be a master someday. So I'm on my way to, hopefully one day I can say that I'm not an archetypal noob. That's my hope. But here's what we're going to do. Since the chat isn't super active, I'm just going to open a random page and read another sentence to generate some content. Boom. Page 272. And I have no idea what the context is because I just cracked it open. When I had seen death and all the terrible solemnity that is gathered around it, and had become ice and night myself, an angry life and impulse rose up in me. My thirst for the rushing water of the deepest knowledge began to clink with wine glasses. From afar, I heard drunken laughter, laughing women, and street noise, dance music, stamping and cheering poured forth from all over. And instead of the rose-scented south wind, the reek of the human animal streamed over me. Luscious lewd whores giggled and rustled along the walls. Wine fumes and kitchen steam and the foolish cackling of the human crowd drew near in a cloud. Hot, sticky, tender hands reached out for me, and I was swaddled in the covers of a sickbed. I was born into life from below, and I grew up as heroes do, in hours rather than years. And after I had grown up, I found myself in the middle land and saw that it was spring. Woo! That's kind of like a teaser because you're like, what the hell? Man, this book is really like what he's doing in this book is basically just letting his imagination, he calls it active imagination. He's letting his psyche run wild. He's communicating with what he calls the unconscious, and he's just letting it rip. Not, no trepidation, just going after it and communicating with all the different parts of himself. And it's actually kind of biblical the way it's written. It has this really religious feel to it, and it kind of puts you in a little bit of a trance the way it's written. There's kind of a rhythm to it that it just gets you going. By the way, I'm reading another series for pleasure called The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. It's actually pretty fantastic. I'm on book 11, and man, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. But here's one thing that's interesting in that book, in that series. So the main character is called the Dragon Reborn, and his name is Rand Al. Oh shit! Spoiler. Fuck. Man, I just spoiled like one of the major things in the first book. Okay, the main character is the Dragon Reborn, and one of the themes. Spoiler alert! This is a light spoiler, not a heavy spoiler. Sorry. The light spoiler is there's all these false dragons, like people who are claiming to be the Dragon Reborn but aren't. But as soon as the true Dragon Reborn claims his place on the throne, then all the other dragons stop trying to claim to be dragons because they aren't. It's the Dragon Reborn. Reborn is a title that gets conferred upon the person. It's not an actual dragon, but they have special powers. And what's interesting about it is that it reminded me of the psyche, because in my experience, when you could call it the seat of the soul, like Gary Zuvak calls it, you could call it the true self, the higher self, your potential. You could call it aiming high, whatever you want to call it. But when you aim high, when you're in your soul, when you're accessing your truest self, the parts of you that try to act like they're running the show, like the parts of you that take over when you don't want them to take over, whether it be compulsions and addictions and false dragons, so to speak, bitterness, resentment, they fade away because they listen to that resonant beam of light that's within you, because it has such a strong center of gravity, such a strong force. That's why it's so powerful to aim high, to organize our minds, to create meditation practices and rituals and things of that sort, because it allows us to deepen our connection to our purpose. But then all the subpersonalities within the psyche, they organize around that. Some more stubbornly than others, obviously, but they will typically follow, in my experience, if something powerful is leading them. So I think that's an interesting piece of clarity that I gleaned from reading that fantasy series. And it's amazing how much meaning can be derived out of a story. Although Sam Harris, who's brilliant, although I don't know where to draw the line with him, because sometimes I really enjoy listening to him, and then he loses me when he goes into hyper rationalism and essentially murders the imagination for all intents and purposes. But I really like his mind. I like the way his mind works, and I like the way he can articulate himself. But obviously he made a great point in his discussion with Jordan Peterson in saying, I could take any recipe out of a cookbook and give it the same biblical meaning that you're making up about other myths. And he had an example in one of the books he had written. And he talked about the salt and the pepper and the light and the dark. And it was just greatly articulated, a beautiful position that he put forward to show that you can truly create metaphors out of anything. Now, is the joke kind of on Sam, though, or out of respect, I could call him Dr. Harris, because I do have a tremendous amount of respect for his work. Is the joke kind of on him, because if he is accessing meaning out of a recipe in a cookbook, does that make it any less meaningful because it's a cookbook? Or does that just mean that he accessed meaning out of that recipe, that he created a myth that had meaning in it? And is it any less meaningful because he just made it up on the spot to demonstrate its fallacy? Or is it perhaps just as meaningful? Let me find it. I bet you I could find this passage on Google. Sam Harris cookbook analogy. I'm going to read it to you. It's a quiet day in the chat, which is absolutely fine. But if you have any thoughts, go ahead and write in. CGH says Sam is a spiritual tourist. I think I know what you mean by that. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things with Sam that don't land very well for me. But let's see if I can find this. It was in his book, The End of Faith, I guess. Let's see. Griswold Grimm says, I thought Sam was a book salesman. Good to see you, Grizz. I'm glad you're here. I don't know. Like, what do you mean he's a book salesman? Well, yeah, he's definitely a book salesman. That's for damn sure. But he's also, got a PhD in neuroscience. And he's not a dummy. That's for sure. Let's see. Unearnedwisdom.com. Sam Harris cookbook. Are you guys going to give me the... Okay, found it. Okay, I'm going to read this. I'm going to read this to you. This is from Dr. Harris himself. And therein I discovered it, as yet uncelebrated mystical treatise. While it appears to be a recipe for seared fish and shrimp cakes with tomato relish, we need only study list of ingredients to know that we are in the presence of an unrivaled spiritual intelligence. Then I listed the ingredients. 1 snapper fillet cubed, 3 teaspoons of chopped scallions, salt and freshly ground pepper. There's a long list of ingredients. Then I go through with a mystical interpretation of this recipe. The snapper fillet is the individual himself, you and I, awash in the sea of existence. And here we find it cubed, which is to say that our situation must be remedied in all 3 dimensions of body, mind, and spirit. They have 3 teaspoons of chopped scallions. This further partakes of the cubic symmetry, suggesting that which we need add to each level of our being by way of antidote comes likewise in equal proportions. The import of the passage is clear. The body, mind, and spirit need to be tended to with the same care. Salt and freshly ground black pepper. Here we have the perennial invocation of opposites, the white and black aspects of our nature. Both good and evil must be understood if we would fulfill the recipe of spiritual life. Nothing, after all, can be excluded from the human experience. Almost done. This seems to be a tantric text. What is more, salt and pepper come to us in the form of grains, which is to say that the good and bad qualities are born at the tiniest actions, and thus we are not in good or evil, but in general, but only by virtue of innumerable moments which color the stream of our being by force of repetition. Then this dash of cayenne pepper, clearly of being such robust color and flavor, signifies the spiritual influence of an enlightened adept. I go on, and this is all bullshit because it's meant to be bullshit. And then Harris bows out. Wow. Yes. Hey, Dan, good to see you. I'm glad that you enjoyed reading from the red book. Okay, so we have... Shane, you're correct of brotherly competition. Great stuff. Got to get to work. Gonna think about Sam Harris. Forget about him. Smart guy. Absolutely. Yeah, have a great day at work. Colin George Jenkins. Welcome, Colin. Glad to see you here. Colin says, Does anybody know Carl Jung? Did Carl Jung say anything about the Holy Grail? I believe Peterson often says that Jung said on the Holy Grail, or maybe this is Peterson's own thing. It's hard because he quotes Jung so much, but Peterson often talks about when they sat around the round table, they had to go to the darkest places in the forest to find what they were looking for, and what you most need is where you least want to look. He talks about how Jung had that quote, what you most need is where you least want to go or look. I'm not sure if that I've read a lot of Jung, but I'm by no means done with all his work. So if I come across that, I'll let you know. But off the top of my head, I'm not sure. I would say within a few years, I'll be done reading all of his work. Maybe less, but he's got quite a bit to read through. CGH Longstone. He may not be dumb, but he's a long way from deep intelligence, stuck in a bucket, has no schema, cognitive chunking. Yeah, well, I have a hard time with Harris because part of me really enjoys listening to him, and part of me feels like he's missing the point. Like that thing he just wrote, it's like all the things he said could be wisdom. I mean, there's no, like, who are we to say that those metaphors weren't unconsciously articulated because he had access to those places in the psyche, within the collective, whatever, within history, to just apply that wisdom onto a metaphor. I mean, so while he's doing it cleverly to try to show us that it's all bullshit, he might be doing it in spite of himself without knowing it, which would really be funny because then the joke's on him. There was one story about someone who went to see a Jungian analyst. And they went to this analyst making up all their dreams. They wanted to show the analyst that dream analysis was garbage, bullshit, invalid. And so they continued to make up dreams, and they would be magnificently, brilliant dreams. They would just be intense, very vivid dreams that he would be making up, and they would go through the analysis. And after a few sessions, the guy goes to the therapist and says, "Ha, I got you. I've been making up these dreams this whole time. So now you know that you're full of shit and this stuff doesn't work. And I tricked you." And the analyst says, I see. Well, the joke's actually on you because everything that you told me came out of the stream of your own consciousness. And thereby, and therein, what you have is a projection of your own psyche, making up images, making up meaning. So really, you've told me everything about yourself through making up these fantasies, unwittingly thinking that you were proving a point, when in reality, all you were showing me was what's really there for you. And the images that you made were of no accident. You made those images because they're a part of you. And you're expressing that, thinking that you're tricking me. So I thought that that was a good story. And maybe that's happening to Sam a little bit. Colin says, good man for that lad. If I'm correct, he didn't mention it. I believe it's something to do with how alchemists become immortal. Nicholas Flamel and Harry Potter. Man, it's been a while since I've seen Harry Potter. I'm going to look up Nicholas Flamel. Yeah, maybe he didn't talk about the Holy Grail, but he definitely talked about the alchemists quite often. Let's see here. Man, Harry Potter's great. Although I like Lord of the Rings better. Nicholas Flamel. Nicholas Flamel was a French scribe. It looks like he's a historical. Oh, okay. Harry Potter. So they took Nicholas Flamel from an actually historical figure. Wow. French wizard and famed alchemist who was the only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone. Yeah, and I love how no. What is it? J.K. Rowling? I was going to say J.R.R. Tolkien. Yeah, I love how Rowling, talked about the Philosopher's Stone and integrated alchemy into her writing. I think that's great. That's really good. So, well, slow stream today for some reason, which is absolutely cool. I'm good with that. In fact, maybe I should crack open one last passage from the Red Book and see what that generates. Colin says, Lord of the Rings got his contact in the trenches of the First World War. Yes, Tolkien was in war, and I think that impacted his writing quite a bit. Okay, here's another interesting passage from the Red Book. Sixth night. This is from the chapter The Desert. Okay. My soul leads me into the desert of my own self. I did not think that my soul is a desert, a barren, hot desert, dusty and without drink. The journey leads through hot sand, slowly waiting without a visible goal to hope for. How eerie is this wasteland? It seems to me that the way leads so far from mankind. I take my way step by step and do not know how long my journey will last. Why is myself a desert? Have I lived too much outside of myself in men and events? Why did I avoid myself? Was I not dear to myself? But I have avoided the place of my soul. I was my thoughts. After I was no longer events and other men. But I was not myself, confronted with my thoughts. I should also rise up above my thoughts to my own self. My journey goes there, and that is why it leads away from men and events into solitude. Is it solitude to be with oneself? Solitude is true only when the self is a desert. Should I also make a garden out of the desert? Should I people a desolate land? Should I open the airy magic garden of the wilderness? What leads me to the desert? And what am I to do there? Is it a deception that I can no longer trust my thoughts? Only life is true, and only life leads me into the desert. Truly not my thinking, that would like to return to thoughts, to men and events, since it feels uncanny in the desert. My soul, what am I to do here? But my soul spoke to me and said, wait. I heard the cruel word. Torment belongs to the desert. Through giving my soul all I could give, I came to the place of the soul and found that this place was a hot desert, desolate and unfruitful. No culture of the mind is enough to make a garden out of your soul. I had cultivated my spirit, the spirit of this time in me, but not that spirit of the depths that turns things of the soul. The world of the soul turns to things of the soul. The world of the soul. The soul has its own peculiar world. Only the self enters in there, or the man who has completely become his self. He who neither in events nor in men nor in thoughts. Through the turning of my desire from things and men, I turned myself away from things and men. But that is precisely how I became secure prey of my thoughts. Yes, I wholly became my thoughts. Couple more paragraphs. I had to detach myself from my thoughts through turning my desire away from them. And at once I noticed that myself became a desert, where only the sun of unquiet desire burned. I was overwhelmed by the endless infertility of this desert. Even if something could have thrived there, the creative power of desire was still absent. Wherever the creative power of desire is, there springs the soil's own seed. But do not forget to wait. Did you not see that when your creative force turned to the world, how the dead things moved under it and through it, how they grew and prospered, and how your thoughts flowered in rich rivers? If your creative force now turns to the place of the soul, you will see how your soul becomes green and how its field bears wonderful fruit. No one can spare themselves the waiting, and most will be unable to bear this torment, but will throw themselves with greed back at men, things, and thoughts, whose slaves they will become from then on. Since then it will only have been clearly proved that this man is incapable of enduring beyond things, men, and thoughts, and they will hence become his master, and he will become their fool, since he cannot be without them, not until even his soul has become a fruitful field. Also, he whose soul is a garden needs things, men, and thoughts, but he is their friend and not their slave and fool. Everything to come was already in images to find their soul. The ancients went into the desert. This is an image. The ancients lived their symbols, since the world had not become yet real for them. Thus they went into the solitude of the desert to teach us the place of the soul is a lonely desert. There they find the abundance of visions of the fruits of the desert, the wondrous flowers of the soul. Think diligently about the images that the ancients have left behind. They show the way of what is to come. Look back at the collapse of empires, of growth and death of the desert, of the monasteries. They are the images of what is to come. Everything has been foretold, but who knows how to interpret it? When you say that the place of the soul is not, then it is not. But then if you say that it is, then it is. Notice that the ancients said in images, the word is a creative act. The ancients said, in the beginning was the word. Consider this and think upon it. The words that oscillate between nonsense and supreme meaning are the oldest and the truest. Whew! This book's too much, man. I was so afraid to open this thing because I knew how powerful it was. Whew! I mean, that's some fucking heavy shit right there. Good way. Yeah, I was like, I had the red book sitting on my shelf for over a year. And I just didn't want to, like, it was one of those things that's so sacred, I didn't want to open it. I didn't want to open it. It's like, I don't want to touch that because as soon as I open it, it's just like opening Pandora's box. And I had to because it got assigned for school reading. So now I'm like, but that stuff that he said about the desert of the soul, and even Peterson talks about Abraham's journey through the desert after he left the land of his father and became his own man. You know, that whole notion of you have to go to the desert in order to reach salvation. You have to be willing to let go of your attachment to pleasure and comfort and things and thoughts and people and entertainment. And it's harder even today because we've got these babies right at our fingertips. I could be entertained and George Carlin had a great joke. Everyone's got a cell phone that'll rub their balls and make them pancakes. That guy was not subtle. He was a brilliant comedian, and I would even call him a philosopher. Dan says, boom, amen. Absolutely. CGH says, magic and language. Griswold Grimm says, I thought it was in German. The Red Book, it's been translated, so yeah, I mean, they all of Jung's work that I know of has been translated. And he writes a lot of these passages in Latin, I believe. So, but what do you all think about that idea of turning away from meaningless comfort and enduring the harshness of the desert so that you can truly see the promised land. There's a moment of Moses' journey that happens, Abraham's journey. The Buddha had his journey through the desert of the soul, becoming an ascetic, starving himself. There were other things on his journey that were difficult, obviously, as well. Who else? It's all over the place, that theme. No, I don't think Moses does make it to the promised land, Grizz, but they did have to journey through the desert of the soul. Dan says, I think his people made it, but did he not make it? I don't know. I'm not a biblical expert, but tell me if that's the case. The only reason I know Moses' story is because I watched the Disney movie when I was a kid. But I haven't done much research into the Bible, to be honest, other than listening to Peterson lectures and now Jung, who references the Bible. Dan says it's the dark night of the soul. Absolutely. That's what it is. It's the dark night of the soul. By the way, who coined that term? We gotta figure that out because it gets thrown around so often. Diamond Roses, welcome. I have not seen you here, so thank you so much for joining us. She says, I think it's essential for one to go through the desert. Absolutely. And also in Native American and indigenous initiation rites, there was the vision quest or the vision fast, where you would go spend 4 days and 4 nights. Jesus spent 40 days and 40 nights in the desert. So what is it about the damn desert, everyone? It's something special about that desert. And peyote grows in the desert. I've never done it, but it does grow there. CGH, actually, no, I'm behind. Griswold Grimm says, it's weird to incarnate in an amusement park if you're not supposed to go on the rides. That's a very good argument. And the question is, how much should one deny oneself of worldly pleasures on the path towards meaning? I think the answer lies within, like we started with. My answer is going to be different than yours. I think it's good to be able to know that you can discipline yourself if you need to. It's also nice to enjoy a ride once in a while, to enjoy the fruits of the world. In fact, after you spend your 40 days and 40 nights in the desert, there's nothing wrong with coming back into society and going and enjoying a show at the theater, or going and enjoying a show at the theater. Yes. My dear lad, I might just go to the theater and enjoy a show. Who does that? I don't do that. I wish I was fancy enough that I thought, I'm going to go to the theater and enjoy a show. Not like the movie theater. We're talking like, a play. But I'm not that fancy and sophisticated. I would love to do that, though. Good morning, Mercury. Good to see you, brother. Okay, let's keep reading here. But yes, Grizz, that's a really good point. And I don't know the answer because I just don't think there is a right or wrong answer. I don't know. But maybe somebody here has... Does anybody have some... not that it was a question. You weren't really asking a question. You were just making a comment. Does anyone have a response to that comment? I really like that comment. It's weird to incarnate in an amusement park if you're not supposed to go on the rides. Boom, boom, boom. CGH says, comfort and glamour can be considered analogous trappings of deadwood. Yes. And Peterson aptly on Joe Rogan podcast, the first time he appeared, talked about letting the deadwood burn off, which I really liked. Might have been Robert Anton Wilson, The Dark Night of the Soul. I think he's responsible for that. It looks like first of all, it's a poem by John of the Cross. It also looks like Eckhart Tolle has talked about the Dark Night of the Soul in a question when I looked it up. Robert Anton Wilson wrote Prometheus Rising. Am I getting that right? I think I'm getting that right because Andrew talks about that book a lot. Diamond Roses says, in the Bible, God made the Israelites go through the desert in order to release all of their old teachings from Babylon and become their true selves. Wow. That's beautiful. And that comes right back to where we started with looking for within for answers rather than looking to external teachers and examples, and really going to the desert for yourself and seeking out a vision. And you know what the thing is, Mercury and I were talking about this, and welcome, Mercury, by the way. I'm glad you're here. Mercury and I were talking about this on the phone last night. And that is, it seems to me that the way of the visionary, the way of a man or a woman, a person that goes into the desert and finds their soul, that's not a common thing. I'm like that. Look around. Do you see very many people living from their soul? I mean, don't fool yourself. There's not. It's a very precious gift when someone chooses to take that path. The reason that people don't do it, I suspect, is because it's hard. And they might not even know that it's a possibility. I mean, how many people out there don't even believe that there is a such thing as a soul, or that they think it's this abstract concept that you might or might not have, and you might go to heaven when you die as a soul, or hell. I mean, that's about as far as a lot of people get, or even less than that, don't believe in it at all. But to me, a soul is not a concept. It's a feeling. It's a place within me. It's not a fucking idea. It's real to me because I experience it. Now, if people don't experience it, it's not bad. In fact, like, I feel like, why do I deserve to experience it if other people don't? Why should I get to have that experience? It's not like I fucking did anything special. I just happened to stumble upon it, you know? So I feel like I have a responsibility as somebody who has experienced what it feels like to be a soul, as abstract as it might sound. I have a goddamn responsibility to at least try to help people feel that for themselves. And if I fail, then I fail. But that's just me. That's just how I feel. That's my path. I take that responsibility onto myself. I'm not saying that anyone else should. Again, look within for the answer. I don't know what the answer is for you. Dan says, I agree. And the desert is within us, though it can be. The desert is within us, though it can be acted out in the physical, as above, so below. Absolutely. You can go to the physical desert and do a vision quest. There's organizations doing vision quests all over the world. There's other programs that do peyote ceremonies. I've done sweat lodges in the desert. And you can also go within and find the desert within yourself. Grizz and Dan say good morning to Mercury. Gloff says he's having a busy morning, and he said that's pretty insightful, to be honest. Glad to hear you're here, though, listening, and good luck with all your work, brother. I'm really excited about your new channel, by the way. Griswold Grimm says there's a prodigal son angle. Gloff says the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. And he says, I think soul is a form. Yeah, like a platonic form. I like that. That's fascinating. I think the soul has a form. I don't know what that form is. Like, maybe it's like a super energetic form. It has to have some sort of energetic body to it. I don't know. That's beyond my conceptual stratosphere. Griswold Grimm says, you followed 12 steps and beat alcohol, bro. That's not nothing. Yeah, I did beat alcohol, or alcohol beat me so bad that I had to surrender to something bigger than myself. Thank you for saying that, though. And yeah, the 12-step recovery did help me find my soul. And I was kind of blessed to to have alcoholism, because if I didn't have alcoholism, as much as it was harmful to myself, my body, my mind, other people, my family, if I didn't have that as a younger person, I would never have been motivated to take a path of attempting to find wisdom in my life. And because I did go through that bullshit that was really hard, and our family almost fell apart, and my dad had to recover from his own alcoholism, and we were just torn in so many different directions, and I was broken and I hated myself. I went through hell. Like, I literally would look in the mirror at 17 years old and I would say to myself, I fucking hate you. And I would look for ways to self-destruct. I would enjoy the process of watching myself suffer and creating problems. I had a sick, poetic pain that I was addicted to. Like the pain of a suicidal ideation or a chronic depression, where it hurts so good and it hurts so bad. But I had to let go of that because I realized I was just spinning a nihilistic web of fate. And I was choosing to do that. And acting like I didn't have a choice. So I had to take responsibility for the fact that I was perpetuating my own suffering and the suffering of others. And once I took ownership for that, I was able to really start caring about myself and caring about others. But it was hard, man. I don't want to do it again. That's for goddamn sure. And I feel horrible because so many of my friends have died that were getting into recovery. I mean, I was really close friends with heroin addicts and meth addicts. And I mean, I didn't do any of that shit. I just drank and smoked weed. And sometimes I snorted some pills. I mean, I didn't go off the fucking, hard drug deep end. And, one of my really close friends, he got fucking shot by a drug dealer in Tucson, Arizona. Because he couldn't get his head out of his ass, and he's dead. And I love that guy. We used to sit out on the porch, and he would play Wild Horses by the Rolling Stones. Wild Horses. And we'd sing it over and over again. And now every time that song comes on, I just think of him. And I can hardly stand to listen to the damn song because it just stings. But anyways, that's enough of that. Thanks for listening to me. Let's see here. So, Grizz, thanks for bringing that up. Once you become conscious of it, it becomes a responsibility. Yes, absolutely. And Griswold Grimm said that a couple weeks ago. When you're aware that you have a problem, then it's your responsibility to fix it. If you're not even aware of it, then you can't do anything about it because you're not aware of it. The thorn in my side. Welcome, the thorn in my side. I'm honored to have you here. I've not seen you here before, and we are just glad to have you joining us today. Through the eye of the needle, quote unquote, was possibly a reference to the gate of Jerusalem, a camel loaded high with stuff having to be unloaded and guided, crouching through the narrow gate of Jerusalem, and only then reloaded. I'm just trying to take that in. A camel loaded high with stuff having to be unloaded and guided, crouching through the narrow gate of Jerusalem, and then only reloaded. What do you think the metaphor is there? I know that through the eye of the needle. What is the meaning of that to you? I really want to know. That's really compelling to me. And it might just be going over my head. So if you can add a little bit, that would be much appreciated. If not, that's okay too. Gloff says, I need to cut back on alcohol, to be honest. Yeah, well, you said you were 26, and I think that's when Jordan Peterson cut back. And so, yeah, now's a great time to cut back as far as that goes. I mean, not that you should live your life based on him, but his story is kind of inspirational. He realized that he wasn't being the best he can be, and he cut it out. And you have so much potential, dude. Like I know you. Like Gloff and we've had podcasts together way back in the day before I was on Sorting Myself Out with Mercury. So Gloff has been in this with us through thick and thin. And yeah, dude, I know that you can figure this out. And maybe you're not disciplined in some areas, but it seems like in other areas you're very disciplined. So I'm sure you could try to figure out how to integrate that for yourself. But yeah, we'd be happy to talk to you anytime. Hey, how's it going? I'm on a live stream right now. I'll come hang out with you in a bit, okay? It's good to see you. My cousin's here. Okay, I've got some more here. So, yeah, Gloff, we've got your back, man. Whatever I can do to help you. I don't know. There's a difference between having a problem with alcohol and being an alcoholic. People who have a problem with alcohol oftentimes can quit cold turkey or can cut back and discipline it. Have the genetic variation of alcoholism, probably need to abstain completely. So what I would suggest is figuring out which category you fall into. Now, one way to know that you have alcoholism is if you continue to make major mistakes that hurt other people and don't learn from them and continue to do it over and over again repetitively. For example, stealing, emotional outbursts, abuse, falling short on your responsibilities. It's called if your life's unmanageable. So I don't know where you're at. It seems to me that you're managing okay, like you're holding a job. I think you have a relationship. I don't know all the details because we haven't talked in a while, but I would just suggest, deciding which category you fall into. Mercury Black says, I'm going to post a long quote by Alan Moore. Much of magic as I understand it in the Western occult tradition is the search for the self with a capital S. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Griswold Grimm says, I developed a taste for pure despair myself. Yes, and this is something I learned early on in psychology and working with clients, in my own experience, and seeing it in other people especially. People get addicted to their own pain cycles. People really do. People get addicted to their depression. People get addicted to their negative attitude. They do. They want it. There's a part of them that wants it. It's okay. It is what it is. There's no reason to beat yourself up for wanting that. But taking responsibility for the part of us, if there is a part of us, because not everybody is the same, but if there's a part of me that actually wants to continue the suffering, that's my responsibility. I can't blame that on anyone else. I'm creating that. There's what happens, and then there's how I respond to it. And that's what I can control, how I respond. Mercury says, this is understood as being the great work, as being the gold the alchemist sought, as being the will, the soul, the thing we have inside us that is behind the intellect, the body, and the dreams, the inner dynamo of us, if you like. Now, this is the single most important thing that we can ever attain, the knowledge of our own self. And yet there are there are a frightening amount of people who seem to have the urge not just to ignore the self, but to actually seem to have the urge to obliterate themselves. Exactly. That's it. That's it right there. Wow. That's beautiful. Alan Moore, I'm guessing. That's the quote you're still talking about. CGH Longstone says, Thorn, Jaffa Gate in the old city is pretty tall. Mercury says, this is horrific, but you can almost understand the desire to simply wipe out that awareness because it's too much of a responsibility to actually possess such a thing as a soul, such a precious thing. What if you break it? What if you lose it? Mightn't it be best to anesthetize it? Does that mean like numb it? Anesthetize. Is that it? I don't know how to pronounce it. Anesthesia. Anesthetize. I gotta figure out how to pronounce that. To deaden it, to destroy it, to not have to live with the pain of struggling towards it and keeping it pure. Whew! Is this still Alan Moore or is this Mercury Black's quote? I think that's still Alan Moore, but that's just absolutely beautiful. Thorn in my side says, thank you for welcoming me. Keep on keeping on. Absolutely. We're really glad you're here. And thanks for being here. And you're welcome. Dan says, I'm so grateful that you survived that personal hell, Ryan. And also says, perfect quote, Merc. Thank you, Dan. I'm really glad I did too, because now I get to know people such as yourself and everyone in this chat and all Mercury and all my friends. And I have a good relationship with my family and all the stuff that Peterson talks about when you sort yourself out. You know, thank you so much for being grateful for that. I'm really glad too. And yeah, I've got a responsibility to do the best I can with it. CGH says, Merc, thanks for that. Cast the other night. Been depressed as fuck. Thanks for that cast the other night. Been depressed as fuck lately. Oh, man, I'm sorry to hear that, dude. CGH. And yeah, I still honestly haven't looked at the podcast with you and Merc, but we're going to post that ASAP. So just give me a little more time on that. It's just been a hectic couple weeks, but I'm sorry to hear you've been depressed and hope that you feel better, man. And I did listen to like a little part of it, and it sounds like you have a tremendous program or system. I don't know what it is, but you have a system for your own spirituality that really, I don't know if that's what you would call it, but that really is profound. So I'm really excited to post that conversation. Thorn in my side says and I'm sorry I'm behind on these comments. Thorn in my side says it's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter heaven. I thought it went in line with the desert and dark night themes, especially something about reducing noise to find the signal. Thank you for that. That makes a lot of sense to me. And I think that's right. It's having a lot of distractions can sometimes make it harder to hear the quiet voice within. And that's why in this age of technology and in the modern era where everyone is continuing to get wealthier and wealthier and the standard of living is getting, for a lot of us, obviously there's some people still in abject poverty, but for a lot of us, it's even for lower class citizens, it's normal to have a cell phone, right? So the standard of living is getting higher and higher. And because of that, I think it is the religious instinct within humans is becoming a little more thwarted because we have unlimited potential in front of us as far as entertainment and pleasure. Now we can look at the internet. We've got movies, radio, podcast, YouTube, porno, intellectual learning. We've got all sorts of stuff at our fingertips. It's just insane. And so I think it's absolutely important that we learn how to discipline ourselves. And we actually have it tougher to live soulful lives than some of our ancestors did. Believe it or not, living in a little indigenous tribe or living in a small village where your daily responsibilities are just to make sure you get your needs met. And as long as you're eating and drinking water and you're getting through, it might be a little easier to hear the little voice within, I think. You know, we might have a tougher path ahead of us than many people did when it comes to accessing some sort of spiritual connection or meaningful connection in our lives. Now, I don't know that for sure. That's speculation, and I haven't thought it through philosophically enough to really say for sure because there might be holes in some of that, but I just have a hunch. Okay, Gloff says, I think I have alcoholism genetically, or I think I have it genetically, but I don't have alcoholism at all. I don't lose control or anything. Yeah, so good. You know, I'm glad to hear that. So yeah, maybe you can just discipline yourself and cut back. Mercury Black says, sorry to hear that you're depressed, Longstone. At least we're in good company together in depression. Love you, brother. Welcome, Adela, darling. Thank you for being here. Pain and pleasure, different ends of the same vibration. Whoa. That's fascinating. Wow. When I realized as a kid, I think I was, 10 years old. And this was profound for me. It might seem simple, but I realized pain is just a feeling that gets given a meaning because of the intensity of the sensation. I mean, pain is literally a sensation that is activating the nerve cells in your body and inflaming them and creating discomfort. But it really is, it's just a sensation. I know that's simple and it's like, duh, it's a sensation. Like, no shit. But for me, it was when I realized that pain was just a feeling, I realized that I didn't have to identify with it. Like pain, I'm not pain. I'm just experiencing a painful feeling. Just like if I experience pleasure, it's not like I am pleasure. I'm just having an experience of pleasure. Without that distinction, it's so easy to get immersed in it. Okay, I got to keep reading here. I think I'm almost caught up. Dan, right here with you, Stone and Merc. It's rough right now, but I'm always learning from it. I no longer demonize the hell periods. Fantastic. That's great. That's kind of what I was just talking about. It's just an experience, and if you can disidentify with it as you, then it can help. Gloff says, are you aware of Longmont Potion Castle? He's based in Colorado. Let me look that up right now. I think you told me about this before, and I don't remember if it's a band or a movie. I think it was a movie. A print caller. Longmont Potion Castle is the pseudonym of an anonymous surrealist prank caller active in Colorado and Los Angeles since 1987. Wow. Details about his personal life are scarce and his real name is unknown. That's hilarious. I think I've heard some of those calls on the internet for sure, like on YouTube. Okay. CGH says, bread and circuses, weapons of mass destruction. Gloff says, we are amusing ourselves to death. You both are right. Yeah, bread. We are. There is a possibility that we could amuse ourselves to death if we forget about, well, we worked our asses off for our ancestors for thousands and thousands of years to survive. I mean, working was not an option. Working hard. I mean, every type of work was honest work. You know why? Because you either got food or not. You either got shelter or not. You either got water or not. You can't cheat nature. You can cheat society a little bit. You can sit at your job and just, jerk around all day and not really take it seriously, and you still get your check. You out there with a loincloth over your genitals hunting for a deer, it's all honest work at that point. So it's just funny how we've been able to create so many tools that allow us to separate ourselves from the harsh realities of nature and the beautiful realities of nature. I mean, how many people stop to look at a great sunset or appreciate the full moon or enjoy the feeling of a slight breeze on your skin during a sunny day? How many people still appreciate those types of things? How many people listen to the sounds of the birds? How many people can sit still for 5 minutes and just breathe without fidgeting or looking at their phone? Griswold Grimm says, if standard of living were measured in community instead of plumbing, it might not it might not be considered going up. Up and up. Mercury says, great point, Grizz. Yeah. That would be interesting if we changed our measurement for standard of living, because in a lot of ways our standard of living has gone down. So that's a very good point. Very, very good point. That's one of the things that I appreciate about this channel, is that we are building a community, even though it's in virtual space and we don't know each other in the flesh yet, which I hope some of us will someday. You know, Merck says, great point, Grizz. And CGH is thanking Merck and for reaching out about the depression. Mercury says, I do like my plumbing though, and I love that my shower has hot water. Yeah, it is great. It is great. We might take it for granted, but it's fantastic, the things that we have. Mercury says, Adela, darling, sorry that the chipmunk didn't respond to you yesterday. My screen kept freezing, and we didn't know we were live. You're apologizing for the chipmunk? Wow. You're really bearing your cross today. That was a great video. I love that little chipmunk. Jay Lewis says, the mind is a collection of mental functions. Welcome, Jay. Thank you for making your first comment today. Yes, the mind is a collection of mental functions. That's an interesting point. And some functions overserve their purpose, while some functions underserve their purpose. So while we might be out of balance in some areas with excesses of thought, there might be other areas where we're not utilizing the full capacity of our minds. Nolan says, amusing. Welcome, Nolan. It's so good to see you, brother. Actually, I just remembered your email that you sent while I was writing papers, and today is my first day to respond to emails. So thank you so much for that, by the way. You said some very, very kind things, and we appreciate the feedback, brother. And I've been missing you. I've been thinking about you, and I hope you're doing well. Amusing Ourselves to Death, Nolan says, is a great book. I just finished reading it a few days ago. It definitely makes you think. Dan says, well put, Ryan. I forget what I was talking about now, but thank you, Dan. CGH says, don't ignore the impact of clean water sources on communicable diseases. Yes, I would add to that too, CGH. We shouldn't ignore the possibility of diseases in general. Although we are fairly protected by our insulated society, all it takes is one genetically abnormal disease that we don't have an immune support built in for. And then it could just wipe out thousands. I don't mean to be a fearmonger here, but that's just the truth. Actually, one of the things that happens with deer herds in the winter, there's this thing called the winter kill. When a deer population becomes overpopulated, it's not good for nature. It's too heavy of a load on the land. And typically what happens is nature calls its own. C-U-L-L-S, not C-A-L-L-S. Culls. It culls the herd. So some sort of disease goes through the herd, or a bunch of them die off in the winter for lack of food. That's nature's way of pruning itself. That is just the reality. Same thing with forest fires. Nature has developed all these brilliant ways of keeping itself intact through evolution, and that includes mass die-off sometimes. And humans are so goddamn arrogant. They think that they're exceptions to that because we have the Promethean arrogance and hubris to think that technology is going to save us from every goddamn thing. But technology never saved anyone from a tsunami or tornado ripping through their house. You know, although it has helped with a lot of things, it's definitely protected us in a lot of ways. And I guess it's stupid to say it's never saved anyone, because obviously there's helicopter evacuations and cars and you can get out. There are ways that technology can save you. But my point is that, like, when it comes down to it, it seems to me that nature is a little more powerful than humans, but we want to think that we're more powerful, which seems to be arrogant in my opinion. I don't think it's right, and I don't think it's a good way to live. And I'm just as guilty of it as everyone else. I go around in my protected little shell thinking that I'm impervious sometimes. So, anyways, enough of that. Dan says the heavy cross of the chipmunk. And I love the video, Merc, he says. Adela Darling says, I saw it all was great, and it's in my favorite. I tried it myself, but well, it was my first time, so I'll keep trying. That's awesome. Yeah, Merc, you did a pretty impressive job getting that chipmunk to eat out of your hand, especially because I know that you live in the middle of nowhere. And so it's not like it's a chipmunk that's used to being around people in the city all the time. So the fact that you were able to feed it out of your hand, it's good. That's pretty cool. It takes some effort to build a relationship with an animal, even if you are giving it food. So, also, a good test of how quiet your mind is how close can you get to animals in nature without disturbing them. Because if your mind's all hectic, you're going to be moving around clumsily and, you know, sending out bad body language, and they're just going to scurry away from you. However, if you go into nature with a clear mind and you walk quietly and you're mindful of your breath and you're mindful of your thoughts and your body language, the chances of you getting close to a deer or birds or potentially other animals, predators, things like that is higher. Not that you'd want to get close to a predator, but, you know, who knows, you might. Dan says nature's way of pruning itself. Exactly, which is why I worry about the transhuman, post-human movement of the global culture, current global culture, transhuman / post-human movement of the global culture. Gris says, I make peace with the transhuman movement by watching Roy Batty's death scene and my Gaius Belter sympathies. Yeah, I don't think that. See what? Like I talked about this before, but look at the story of the Titanic. And my professor, Dr. Glenn Slater, wrote a great piece on this. And it's called Resinking the Titanic. When the Titanic was built, they said it was inconquerable. Nothing could sink it. It's the most powerful thing in the world. They basically said it's more powerful than the ocean because the ocean has no chance against it no matter what. It could withstand anything. And they called it the Titanic, which was dumb because the Titans got banished to the underworld by the Olympians, and they were banished to the bottom of the ocean, literally. So, you know, if God has a sense of humor, then, you know, the Titanic is one of his greatest jokes, or the creator, as I prefer to call God. I prefer the creator. One of the greatest jokes of the universe was that story, because why would you name your ship after a myth in which the Titans were banished to the bottom of the ocean and then act surprised when your ship sinks? I'm not trying to be overly superstitious here, but it's a little ironic. Mercury's, I think I read Grizz's already. Mercury says, last year I made friends with some frogs and hand-fed them grasshoppers. Wow, that's cool. This year I've been hanging out with birds and a couple crawling critters. That's a great meditation, to hang out with animals, to go out into nature and do stuff like that. So, Grizz, I gotta read that in a minute. Nolan says, thanks, Ryan. I'm doing well. On a bit of a vacation at my family's cabin. Fantastic. Catching up on a lot of reading. Excited to get back to writing, though. We'll have to do another podcast sometime. Absolutely, Nolan. Anytime, man. Anytime, just reach out. And I hope you're enjoying your vacation and your reading. Mercury says, I had one big frog that would often come when I called. What? You trained a frog? That's insane. That's hilarious. You're like a frog whisperer. Mercury says, Nolan, glad to hear that you're getting some time at your cabin. Looking forward to talking to you again. Grizz says, if you mention the Titanic one more time, I'll tell you about Jekyll Island, damn it. Jekyll Island? Let's see here. Jekyll Island. You got me so curious now. Jekyll Island is located off the coast of the U.S. state of Georgia in Gwynn County. It is one of the Sea Islands and one of the Golden Isles of Georgia Barrier Islands. The island is owned by the state of Georgia and run by a self-sustaining, self-governing body. Wow, that sounds perfect. Self-governing island? Ooh, cool. Dan says, well put, Grizz. I thought that there was something Philip K. Dick about that. Okay, I've got a question. How do you develop the discipline to look within? I'll answer that. And then let me read these comments. Nolan says, thanks to Mercury. And Grizz says, short version. Rich folk opposed to Federal Reserve were all in Titanic. We got to talk about that in person or on our next phone call, Grizz. Okay, so Detail Ruck, I can't pronounce that, sorry. Detail, I'll just call you Detail. Says, how do you develop the discipline to look within? Well, I think part of it is taking that leap of faith and just doing it, giving yourself permission to dive into the discomfort and trust what's there on the other side. One way to do it is leave your phone at home, in your apartment, wherever. If you live in a city, go to the park. If you live closer to nature, then go somewhere peaceful in nature. Leave your phone at home. Okay, I know that your mind's going to tell you, well, I need my phone. What if it's an emergency? Well, if it's an emergency, then, you'll just have to take that risk. Not have your phone for a little bit. Leave your phone in your room, your apartment, in your house. Go for a walk. And you will not be able to help but being at least somewhat in contact with yourself because you won't have that distraction in front of you. You could do that often every day. Take a walk or go sit at the park and meditate every day for at least 5 minutes in stillness. If you do that, you will continually build the courage to look within and just listen to what's happening. Don't try to change it. Don't try to force it. Just be present to yourself and watch it, just like meditation. I would suggest if you're a beginner at working with your mind, no shame in that. We're all beginners. But if this is your first real attempt, I would suggest don't be shy to pick up a meditation book. Look at Eckhart Tolle. Look, if you're more into visualization, look at some active imagination practices from Jung. Look up some visualization guided meditations, and just go experiment. And here's my suggestion. And a great meditation teacher wrote about this. When you start meditating, whether you're doing a visualization or whatever you're doing to reflect on yourself, journaling, there's so many different ways to meditate, not just sitting with your legs crossed. Once it starts feeling really good, like you're like, oh man, this is great, stop. It's going to be counterintuitive because usually people stop meditating when they're sick of it. But here I suggest that you stop meditating when it feels good. Why? Because that's going to create a positive memory that's going to make you want to do it again. So even if you're only meditating for 2 minutes, but it's really feeling good, stop when it feels good. Don't stop when you're, chomping at your leg to get the hell out of there. Because then you're just going to have that memory in your head of, oh man, the last time I tried to look within myself, it was miserable. I don't want to do that again. So find a good experience, sit with it for a couple minutes and stop, and then build off that. And eventually you might be able to do that for 30 minutes straight, an hour straight. It starts with one step at a time. You can do this. You can do it. Yeah, we've got your back. Send us an email, sortingmyselfout0@gmail.com, and we are more than happy to give you some ideas, maybe some techniques that you could try. If you want to just talk about anything that's bothering you, we will do that. We can either do it confidentially or we can do a podcast. So take advantage of that opportunity if you want to. Okay, I'm going to read a few more comments, and then I got to get out of here. Do I sound like a New Englander? Get out of here. I parked my car in Harvard Yard. I can't do accents. My girlfriend always grills me for my accents. Okay. Mercury says, Grizz, it's been great getting to know you more in the Sacred Flip. We should record a podcast soon together for the channel. Grizz says, don't know if it'll be suitable for air, but could use a session with you or both, closing a chapter. We would love to, Grizz. Let's get it on the schedule. Detal says, thanks for the response. You are most welcome, my friend. Thank you for being here. Griswold Grimm says, hardest part of starting can often be believing you're worth the effort. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, shame is it's a real pain in the ass. That really keeps people down. That's a big step, letting go of shame and self-criticism. Mercury says, we can talk off air, Grizz. Detal says, I appreciate that, man. Creator bless you. And yes, you do. I'm from New England. Well, bless you as well, brother or sister, whoever you are, whatever your identity is, and thank you for being here. Griswold Grimm says, this is a good virtual space, Detal. Fantastic. Thanks, Grizz, for saying that. Adela Darling. I love it when you comment, Adela Darling. That was a great accent, Ryan. My dad is from New Hampshire. New Hampshire. No, I don't think that's Park the car and Harvard Yard. I think it's because that's the easiest one to do. I don't know if I could carry it forward to other sentence structures. In Maine, they have the thickest accent. It's insane. It's like a Boston accent, but it's like deeper and it's kind of got a grumble to it. It's a very interesting accent here in Maine. It's like they're from an alien planet or something. Okay, I got to get out of here. Been streaming for about an hour and a half. Thank you all so much for joining. Hit that like and subscribe button and the notification bell if you enjoyed this. It really helps the channel. And other than that, we're just happy you're here participating. The community is what's important. The more that we spread the word and build the channel, the more we can build the community. But what's most important is you're here, you're listening, you're participating. And for those of you who just listen, I know there's a lot of you out there that just listen. You don't write comments. I appreciate you so much too. And I know you're out there. And I've gotten a couple odd comments from people here and there saying, yeah, we just listened to you and Mercury. But I just wanted you to know I was out there. So thank you. Just listening is an absolutely fine way to participate. And we're just glad you're here. So, all right, everyone. Thanks for the great stream. And thanks. I see all your comments. Love you all. Goodbye.